Hello, Virgo. Something is wrong with the air around your life right now. Not wrong in a bad way, wrong in the way that precedes something significant. The way pressure drops before a storm, the way everything goes unusually still before something large moves through. That specific quality of wrongness that your nervous system registers before your conscious mind has language for what it's sensing, you felt it before, maybe not exactly like this, but that particular charged quality of ordinary life right before it stops being ordinary. And you're in it right now, whether you've been naming it or not, whether you've been allowing yourself to fully feel it or keeping it at arm's length. It is present, it is real, and it is not going away. Drop a comment if you've been feeling that specific electric quality lately, like something is gathering around your life that hasn't announced itself yet. Because I want to start with something honest. Change of the magnitude I'm reading in your field right now doesn't actually begin in the external world. It begins much earlier than that. It begins in the moment a person can no longer sustain the current version of their reality, not because the current version is necessarily terrible, but because they have outgrown it, because the person living inside it has expanded beyond what the current configuration can contain, because the gap between who they have become on the inside and what their external life reflects on the outside has grown too wide to be comfortable, too wide to be ignored, too wide to keep filling with distraction and routine and the quiet resignation of someone who has stopped expecting their life to actually match them. That gap, that specific, persistent, impossible to ignore gap is what generates the kind of pressure I'm reading around you right now. And pressure of that quality always eventually finds a release. Can you feel that gap in your own life right now? The distance between who you actually are and what your current reality is reflecting back at you? Tell me in the comments, because here is what I want to name about the word shocking. We use it to mean unexpected, surprising, something that arrives without warning. But here is what I have observed about the things that feel most shocking when they arrive. They are almost never actually unexpected. They are almost always things that we're building slowly beneath the surface in the invisible accumulation of small shifts and quiet pressures and the gradual movement of things that we're always going to move, but we're moving too slowly to track consciously. And then suddenly they reach a threshold and they become visible all at once. And the visibility feels sudden, feels shocking, feels like it came from nowhere. But it didn't come from nowhere. It came from everywhere, from everything that was quietly accumulating in the background of your life while you were focused on the foreground. The probability that what is approaching your reality right now has been building in exactly that way is something I want you to sit with. What has been quietly accumulating in the background of your life that you haven't been fully tracking. Drop a comment if something specific surfaces when you sit with that question. Now, I want to talk about the forever, because that word is doing something important in this reading, and I don't want to slide past it. Forever is not a promise I can make about any specific outcome, about any guaranteed trajectory. But forever in this context points at something real, something I can speak to honestly. There are moments in a life, not many, but real ones, where something shifts in a way that cannot be shifted back, where a door opens that changes the available landscape permanently, where information arrives or a realization crystallizes or a circumstance breaks open in a way that makes the previous configuration of your life permanently unavailable as a resting place, not because it was bad, but because you have seen something you cannot unsee, known something you cannot unknow, felt something that has permanently recalibrated your understanding of what is possible. And those moments, when they come, they do change things forever. Not by delivering a specific guaranteed outcome, but by permanently altering the internal landscape from which all future outcomes are navigated. The probability that you are approaching one of those moments is what I keep finding when I read your field right now. Can you feel the approach of something that will alter your internal landscape permanently? Tell me in the comments, because I want to get specific about the massive, because that word matters, and I don't want to let it dissolve into abstraction. What makes a change massive is not always its visibility, not always its drama, not always the degree to which it announces itself to the people around you. Sometimes the most massive changes are the quietest ones, the internal ones, the ones that happen in the space between one breath and the next, where a belief you have held for years suddenly reveals itself as a choice rather than a fact, where a story you have been telling yourself about your limits suddenly loses its authority, where a fear that has been organizing your decisions for so long that it became invisible suddenly becomes visible. And in that visibility, loses most of its power. Those internal shifts, they are massive because they change everything that follows, every decision, every reach, every moment of choosing between the smaller option and the larger one. Every time you assess what is possible for you, you do it from a different place. And that difference.com pounds over time into a life that is measurably different from the one that would have been built from the old foundation. Have you been feeling the beginning of that kind of internal shift? Something fundamental moving in how you understand your own limits? Drop a comment if that resonates. Now I want to talk about what massive external change actually requires of you, because there is a version of this reading that leaves you passive, waiting for the change to arrive and wash over you, sitting in anticipation of something that is going to happen to you. And I want to actively resist that version, because the changes that are building around your life right now, they are not going to happen to you. They are going to happen through you, through your choices, through your willingness to move differently than you've been moving, through your capacity to respond to what arrives with genuine presence, rather than the reflexive patterns of the previous version of yourself. The change needs a participant, a conscious, awake, genuinely engaged participant, not someone who watched it happen, someone who showed up for it, who made the choices it required, who stayed present through the discomfort of the transition, rather than bracing and enduring and waiting for the difficult part to be over. The probability that your active participation in what is shifting determines the quality and the depth of what the change ultimately becomes is not something I can overstate. What are you being asked to participate in right now that you've been watching from the sideline? Tell me in the comments, because I want to address something directly. The fear, not the surface fear, the deeper one, the one that exists not because you're afraid nothing will change, but because you're afraid something will. Because change of this magnitude, real, massive, permanent change, asks something that is genuinely frightening. It asks you to stop being the person who is waiting for their life to begin and start being the person whose life is actively happening. It asks you to release the identity of someone in transition, someone becoming, someone almost there, and step into the identity of someone who has arrived, who is here, who is operating at full capacity in their actual present life, rather than a future version of it that will never quite arrive as long as you keep locating yourself in the almost. That transition from almost to actually .frum, becoming, to being .frum, waiting for life to change, to living inside the change. That is what the fear is actually about. Not the change itself, the identity shift that the change requires. Can you feel that specific fear? The fear not of failure, but of arrival? Drop a comment if that lands somewhere precise. Because I want to spend a moment here in the texture of what massive change actually feels like from the inside, because it is frequently misidentified. People expect it to feel triumphant, expansive, flooded with clarity and certainty, and the specific exhilaration of a life finally moving in the right direction. And sometimes it does feel like that, but more often it feels like vertigo, like the specific disorientation of someone whose reference points are shifting, whose previous landmarks are no longer where they were, whose internal map of what is possible and what is realistic and what is available to them is being redrawn in real time. And that redrawing is uncomfortable. Even when what is being drawn is larger and truer and more genuinely reflective of what you are, even when the new map is more accurate than the old one. The transition between maps, the period where the old one is no longer reliable and the new one isn't fully drawn yet, that is where most people mistake growth for instability, where they interpret the disorientation of expansion as evidence that something is wrong, rather than evidence that something is genuinely changing. Hmm. Have you been interpreting some of your recent disorientation as a problem when it might actually be the sensation of something real shifting? Tell me in the comments. Now, let me bring something in that I think is important. The word tonight in the title, and I want to honor it without turning it into a specific temporal promise. Tonight suggests immediacy. It suggests proximity. It suggests that whatever is building is not a distant theoretical possibility. It is close. It is present. It is already in the room with your life, even if you can't yet see it clearly. And the quality of tonight, that feeling of something being right here, right now, rather than somewhere in a vague future, is accurate to what I'm reading in your field. This is not approaching from a distance. This is not something you are moving toward over a long stretch of time. The pressure is present, tense. The shift is current. The movement is happening in the fabric of your life right now, dot in this specific period, dot in the actual texture of your current days. And the probability that you are closer to visible change than the waiting has made you believe is genuine. Stay awake to what is already here, not to what is coming, to what is already present and moving and real in your life right now. Because the change you're watching for in the distance may already be happening underneath your feet. Drop a comment if you can feel something already in motion that you haven't fully acknowledged yet. Let me bring this toward its landing now with something solid, with something worth carrying. You are in the middle of a significant shift, not approaching it, not preparing for it from a safe distance. Inside it, the pressure you've been feeling, the specific charged quality of your life right now, the sense that something is gathering around you that hasn't yet revealed its full shape. That is not anxiety without object. That is accurate perception of real movement, real change building in the structure of your life, real probability accumulating around a version of your reality that is more genuinely yours than what you have been living in. And the forever that the title speaks of is not a guarantee delivered from outside. It is the natural consequence of a person who has grown large enough to finally stop fitting inside their previous life, who has become too real for the smaller version, too awake for the unconscious patterns, too honest for the comfortable fictions, too present for the life that was built on absence. That person is you right now, in this specific moment, already in the middle of the most significant shift of this chapter of your life. Breathe, not in anticipation of what is coming, in recognition of what is already here, already moving, already changing the architecture of everything that follows. You don't have to wait for tonight. Tonight is already inside this moment. The change is already happening, and you are already different than you were. Whether you've given yourself permission to fully feel that yet or not, it is true. It is real, and it is only getting more visible. Stay present, stay awake, stay in the full awareness of a person who knows that what is shifting around them is not something happening to them. It is something happening as them. I don't sell futures, I build architects. No predictions, just the raw truth for the tough ones. Stay magic, stay in the now.